In the Balkan Peninsula, a region where empires have risen and fallen, where religion and ethnicity intersect with politics and memory, the late 20th century would once again be stained with blood. After the devastating wars in Croatia and Bosnia, many hoped the storm had passed. But in the shadows of Serbia's southern province, Kosovo, a different war was simmering, one rooted not just in territory, but in identity. Kosovo had long been a place of sacred symbolism for Serbs, home to Orthodox monasteries, and the site of the 1389 Battle of Kosovo, a defining moment in Serbian national consciousness. But by the late 20th century, ethnic Albanians made up over 90% of the population. To them, Kosovo was their homeland, just as sacred, just as ancestral. Under Josip Broz Tito's rule in the former Yugoslavia, Kosovo enjoyed a degree of autonomy. Ethnic Albanians managed local institutions and cultural life thrived. But when Slobodan Milosevic rose to power in the late 1980s, this autonomy was stripped away. Belgrade imposed direct control, sending in Serb administrators, dismissing thousands of Albanian workers, and shutting down Albanian language schools and media. Frustration turned to protest. Protest turned to resistance. But initially, it was peaceful. Led by Ibrahim Rugova, the ethnic Albanians created a parallel society, complete with underground schools, clinics, and even a shadow government. But their calls for peaceful resistance were drowned out by the growing radicalization of younger Albanians. In 1996, a small and relatively unknown group emerged, the Kosovo Liberation Army, or KLA. Armed with Kalashnikovs and fueled by years of suppression, they launched attacks on Serbian police and officials. The Serbian state responded with overwhelming force. Villages were shelled, entire communities uprooted. The term ethnic cleansing, once associated with Bosnia, resurfaced in Kosovo. In 1998, Serbian forces launched Operation Horseshoe, an aggressive counterinsurgency campaign. Villages like Prikaz, the home of KLA leader Adam Joshari, were leveled. The massacre of Joshari and over 50 family members became a turning point. The war had truly begun. As the brutality escalated, the world began to pay attention. Journalists captured haunting images, lines of refugees stretching for miles, bodies piled in courtyards, flames rising from farmhouses. But diplomacy faltered. The international community, still haunted by its failure in Bosnia, called for negotiations. In February 1999, representatives of Serbia and Kosovo's Albanians met in Rambouillet, France. The talks were tense and the terms complex. The Albanians agreed to NATO troops in Kosovo. Serbia refused, viewing it as an attack on its sovereignty. The talks collapsed. On March 24, 1999, NATO launched Operation Allied Force. For the first time in its history, the alliance waged a military campaign without United Nations approval, justified as a humanitarian intervention. NATO warplanes bombed Belgrade, Pristina, and Niš. They targeted command centers, air defenses, bridges, and fuel depots. The goal: force Milosevic to withdraw his forces from Kosovo. But the airstrikes also hardened Belgrade's resolve. Serbian forces escalated ethnic cleansing on the ground. Entire towns, like Jakovica and Mitrovica, were emptied. Over 850,000 Albanians fled Kosovo, most to Albania, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. Thousands more were trapped in forests and mountains. Refugee camps swelled. The humanitarian crisis deepened. Despite early setbacks and criticism over civilian casualties, including the accidental bombing of the Chinese embassy, NATO's campaign intensified. Stealth bombers pierced Yugoslav airspace nightly. British SAS teams coordinated with the KLA. The tide was turning. By June 1999, with his economy crippled and domestic unrest growing, Slobodan Milosevic capitulated. A peace deal was signed in Kumanovo. Yugoslav forces withdrew from Kosovo. NATO's KFOR troops entered, greeted by cheering crowds. The United Nations took over administration. The war was over, but peace would prove elusive. In the months that followed, thousands of Serbs fled Kosovo. Retaliatory attacks on Orthodox churches, homes, and civilians occurred. NATO struggled to prevent reprisal killings. Over 1,600 people remain missing to this day, both Albanians and Serbs. In 2008, Kosovo declared independence. The United States, the United Kingdom, and many European nations recognized it. Serbia, Russia, and several other countries did not. The legacy of the war remains raw. Kosovo is now home to an ethnically Albanian majority, with a fragile Serb minority concentrated in the north. NATO's KFOR presence continues, and the international community remains a key mediator in tense negotiations between Belgrade and Pristina. The Kosovo War lasted just 15 months, but its effects echo across generations. It was a war of ethnic identity, of human rights, of sovereignty and survival. In the end, Kosovo gained de facto independence, but the scars, political, psychological, and human, remain. The world watched. Some acted, some didn't. And once again, a corner of the Balkans reminded humanity of the consequences of silence, the price of division, and the cost of freedom.